Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another developer Q&A video for Eve Echoes. Each week the developers take 4 questions posed by the community, answer them, then post those responses to the official Eve Echoes Twitter account, Facebook page, and in-game. And each week I then take this dev Q&A and I go over the 4 questions and the 4 answers and I give my opinions on it all. If you just want the dev Q&A, if you're not here for an opinion piece, I do recommend checking it out on Twitter, Facebook, and in-game. Otherwise, what I like to do is talk about, do I agree with the question? Do I agree with the answer? What could this mean going forward? And what could we do to make things better? I like to try and be as proactive and constructive with all of this as possible, but recently these videos have sort of brought out the ranty Benzie a bit more, so do be aware that, yeah, that tends to be a thing nowadays. Anyway folks, if you have a question you would like to ask the developers, please click the link in the description down below. It'll take you through to a Google document where you can ask your own questions. If your question is one chosen to be responded to, you will win a month of Basic Omega, plus of course you get an answer to your question and featured in one of my videos. How awesome's that? Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right in then to the developer Q&A for the week of the 2nd of February through to the 8th of February. Question number 1. Will there be a fuel bay fleet hangar and ship maintenance bay for capital ships in future? To add some clarity to this, basically in EVE Online, capital ships aren't just like bigger versions of battleships. They have things like a fuel bay and the ship maintenance bay on carriers that people can actually dock to and, you know, repair their shields, swap out modules and things like that. Basically like a temporary station in space, which can be pretty cool. It does change the game quite dramatically once you put carriers in there. Now Wilson responds, the fuel tank will be added in the future, which I personally think is really useful. I think most ships should have a fuel tank that they can use. I think having a cargo bay and a fuel tank is great. But I think for things like interceptors that might want fuel for certain things, but necessarily should have a smaller cargo space, you know, having them separated could be pretty cool. And I hope it's not something that is just for capital ships. As for the ship maintenance bay, she says, we need to further consider the impact it will have on the combat environment in EVE Echoes. It's also necessary to further simplify its operations for EVE Echoes. It works very differently in EVE Echoes, basically. A lot of things work very differently in EVE Echoes to in EVE Online. We can't just transpose it one for one straight across, and I agree with that. I kind of would like to see it come across though. I think having this kind of stuff would give carriers at least some use in EVE Echoes. I just kind of think that if you're trying to add features to capital ships to make them relevant, it's still not going to work. We need to add content that makes them relevant. There needs to be more stuff going on. We need proper sovereignty wars. We need reasons to fight proper sovereignty wars, like scarcity of resources found only in certain areas. We need to be fighting for territory, and that territory actually needs to be meaningful rather than just the colour of a map. Things like moon mining and that in EVE Online have been really sort of instrumental in bringing that about by making sure that corporations and alliances are constantly vying against each other for certain resources because they need more of X or Y. You need to destroy your opponent's citadels or take them over with Entosis links so that you can then harvest those materials yourself because they're not available in the areas of space that you currently hold. Things like that. Sovereign warfare is all fair well and good to have these big fights and have some citadels change hands and watch the map change colour, but for the time being it's ultimately meaningless, and until we have some meaningful reason to go to full sovereign warfare, capitals are never really going to have a place no matter what you keep adding to them. Oh boy, this is going to be one of those questions, isn't it? I can see it already. As a player who has been tier 10 for some time, I'm curious to when the next tier levels will be added. No, 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 no. But let's read the rest of the question first. Also, since the ships from here on will likely be very advanced, will the ship bonuses require expert skill level? Are more diverse skill in future plans, for example Minmatar Frigate Command, Mar Battleship Engineering and so on? Will there also be newer version of faction ships once new tiers are in place? Oh boy, this is someone who's seen EVE Online and just completely misses the point of freaking everything. This is a ranty Benzie question. Let's read the response first and then I'm going to break this down. It's still under discussion whether the large-scale addition of new ships in future versions will require higher tech levels, but new manufacturing materials and industrial skills are most likely needed. Currently, there are no plans to add new faction ships. Okay, so first of all, new faction ships, we don't need them. There are plenty of them in the game. I think there's stuff we need far earlier than new faction ships. Like, what are you looking at and wanting to have added here? If you want to invent whole new, like, destroyers and battle cruisers for the factions, sure, that would be cool, but not before we get meaningful content into the game first. Secondly, more diverse skills in future plans, for example, Minmatar Frigate Command. Now, I'm going to pause here. If you're playing EVE Online, you do actually have Minmatar Frigate, Minmatar Battleship, Minmatar Battle Cruiser, and those are skills that you use. It's not just Battle Cruiser operation and things like that, like we have in EVE Echoes. They are racially separated, which means if you start as a Minmatar character, you start with some skills in Minmatar ships, and vice versa if you start in Caldari, Galente, or Amar. Ultimately, you might find that if you want to fly, for example, the Dromiel gets bonuses from small cannons, small projectile turrets, sorry. It also gets bonuses from the Minmatar frigate skill and from the Galente frigate skill. You'd need to level up both of those for the faction frigate version. It's a cool way of doing things, but there's no such thing as a Mar battleship engineering. It's just a Mar battleship. That's all you have. Engineering is engineering, but it's then subdivided into a load of other skills as well. I was literally playing EVE Online earlier and showing a friend of mine who's been interested in Echoes, but is more of a PC gamer, and when I showed him the skills, he nearly collapsed. The fact is that when we look at skills in EVE Echoes, we have things like small cannon operation, small cannon upgrade, and then you have the advanced and expert tiers of that, and that's it. It's nice and simple, it's clear what they do. If you want to be a small cannon pilot in EVE Online, you're going to be training your small projectile turrets. You then might decide to go into small autocannon specialization or small artillery specialization, which are strikes in EVE Echoes. You then have things in your gunnery skills, like motion tracking, like surgical strike. Like, there's a load of different skills that all have these different kinds of names. Heck, even in propulsion, in EVE Echoes we have Afterburner, we have Micro Warp Drive, and then Advanced and Expert, and that's pretty much it. We don't have things like evasive maneuvers or acceleration control, which are different skills in EVE Online. There's a lot of variety of skills in EVE Online. The skills themselves do less, but there's more of them, if that makes sense. So whereas, for example, our small cannon Afterburner, for example, gives you just a better Afterburner speed. In EVE Online, you've got Afterburner that will reduce the amount of capacitor required for your Afterburner, then evasive maneuvers will... You kind of have to train 3 or 4 skills to get the same benefit that one skill gives you in EVE Echoes. And finally, the bit here, when are there going to be new tier levels? The whole point of EVE Echoes is that basically the journey up to Tech 10 is just training you for the game. Once you're at Tech 10, everything is available. To ask people to then go up to Tech 11 or Tech 12 or some bullshit like that is just pointless. When you say, oh, I want more tech levels, what you're basically saying is, I want it to be longer and harder for new players to get into this game, and that is a bad thing. That is a very bad thing. Tech 10, in my opinion, already takes too long. There is no reason that you should be a year into playing a game and still not able to access all of its content. 6 months would have been a good time limit, I think, to reach Tech 10. It means that, yes, Tech 5, Tech 6, and Tech 7 are going to rush through quickly, and you're going to be pushed to go into Omega earlier on to reach Tech 8, 9, and 10, but those ships become readily available to everyone. Tech levels only exist to artificially gate the content you have available. In EVE Online, again, using EVE Online as an example, if you want to fly a Slasher Interceptor, basically a stiletto, then you don't have to wait until you hit Tier 7 or Tier 10 to unlock it with certain skills. You have to train the relevant skills to unlock it. If you want to fly a Wolf or a Jaguar, which are Minmatar assault frigates, you don't have to wait until you hit the relevant tech level because you've got enough accrued skill points. You train assault frigates as a skill, which requires some basic training in, like, Minmatar frigate and stuff like that to get you there, but it's not this artificial gating. Ultimately, adding additional tech levels is such a ridiculous notion. It exists purely for someone who has that little rat thing in their brain that the big numbers look good to. The kind of people who play AFK, auto battlers and idlers and stuff like that. Just, you know, those different idle games that just rack up the scores. The people who, you know, when you watch those ads on YouTube and it's just a guy, he taps it once and he puts down a whole load of troops and they just melt through the opposition and a number racks up and that kind of stuff. And it's... You don't need more tech levels. You've hit the end game. Stop asking for more bullshit progression to lock things away from you. Any ships that get added to the game now should be added at Tech 10 and lower. There needs to be more variety of ships added at lower tech levels. We need a wider variety at Tech 10. If Tech 10 is going to be the end game, then we need to have every ship represented there. I need a Hurricane at Tech 10 that is actually a combat Hurricane, so that if I have medium cannons, I'm not only flying a Stabber or a Stabber 2 or a Cinnable at Tech 10. I want options. I want ships that I can actually fly using that. Tacking on Tech 11... Oh god, I'm moving on because it's making me angry. No, we don't need additional tech levels. Are there any plans for modules, maybe as high mid slots for capsuleer outposts or structures which prevent the usage of normal cloaks in sovereignty systems? It's annoying if the enemy just sits with non-covert ops ships, including battleships, cloaked in the system, without any chance to hunt him. And if there are such plans, when can we expect to see them? I would suggest that you try to look... This is something I've said a lot. A lot of EVE Online alliances and corporations will actually have 24/7 gate camps and sort of just guys who fly through their space and watch what's going on and track enemy movements. And if you see that there are battleships moving towards your sovereign space, that word gets handed back quickly, people jump into position, and they take them out quickly. You set up gate camps and things that will stop these standard battleships, the non-covert ops and that, from coming in and cloaking. It's basically people not defending their space properly in EVE Echoes. But again, why would you right now is the question. Anyway, we will consider adding an anti-cloaking module so that some recon frigates can take on the anti-cloaking role. The specific release time is to be determined. Now, if you jump back through these videos, this is something I've actually suggested in the past, and it's a bit of a hit and miss situation, having a particular ship that can decloak enemies. I think if it gets rid of standard cloaks by standard, that's fine. I think having it drop covert ops cloaks hits a dangerous position, because suddenly you can make a gate camp, you put one of these recon frigates in there with a decloaker or whatever you're going to call it, and anyone who's got a covert ops cloak, which is designed specifically for getting through those gate camps, is suddenly caught in it, decloaked and destroyed. It completely negates the system. It's something that would need a blasted long cooldown. I don't know. I'm very hit and miss on this right now. I'm going to be honest as well, I'm not sure it should be on frigates. Destroyers seem more the kind of way it should go, and if it's on a destroyer or a frigate or whatever, it needs to be on something that is ridiculously squishy and has no other combat potential. Basically what they've done to the interdictors and stuff like that. Ultimately, I'm not against it, it just needs to be implemented carefully. I think it could be quite an interesting idea, but then I think we also need covert ops skills to help negate that. I think having a skill that reduces the decloak delay and the sort of the lock-on delay and your recloak timer would be a really interesting skill to train into, but hey, maybe that's just me. Finally then, with the upcoming industrial update, are you going to be adding more of the ore ships? We know that the Orca and Porpoise exist in the code, hence the screenshot I used at the start. Is there any plans of adding the covert ops version of the Venture or the ore freighter? If they're not in the May update, is there any plans of adding them in the future? Thank you for your time. And Pixie says, there will be no covert ops industrial ships in the May update. Unfortunately, we have no plans to add these ships until the balance adjustment in the second half of 2022. Now, we know that there are some ships, some industrial ships, like they've talked about the Rorqual and the Noctis coming in the May balance update, and the Noctis particularly intrigues me because that's a ship that has its own unique playstyle of salvaging, and salvaging is not something that exists in EVE Echoes in its current form. Therefore, adding the Noctis becomes this really interesting situation where you've kind of got to suddenly build an entire new playstyle in with that, and that could be really cool. The Rorqual, on the other hand, worries me because that's a capital-sized mining ship that has a lot of potential to completely undermine the entire market economy, the mining economy right now. That's already in a very fragile state. It's kind of like having a very fragile floor and then dropping a piano on it from 5 stories up. Yeah, I couldn't think of a better example off the top of my head. Anyway, the simple point is the Rorqual worries me. Now, it's nice to see here, though, that the Covert Ops Venture, which is something, again, I've said for a long time, Ventures should have the ability to be Covert Ops cloaked. Gives you a reason to fly one. Having a Venture and being able to move into enemy territory to mine stuff, or to get through into Nihilist compressed space, etc., is a really interesting reason to actually fly a Venture. And I would love it just to be simply in the May balance update, the Venture 3 now gets a can-fit Covert Ops cloaks. That's literally all it needs. Just do that. Just do that and you fix the Venture 3 as far as I'm concerned. But what's telling here, we have no plans to add these ships until the balance adjustment in the second half of 2022, which confirms A, there is going to be a second balance adjustment this year, and by damn we will hold them to that. 2 a year is the bare minimum, and we will continue to hold them to that, but also they are intending to add more ships around about that time. That's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to my Rifter Assault. Give it to me now. So, to wrap it up, we're not getting the Porpoise or the Orca, we're not getting the Covert Ops industrial ships until later this year at the earliest. No, we don't have a way to drop cloaks from a module on a station, but we might be adding a module to ships, which is an interesting way of doing things. We could be looking at the ship maintenance bay and fuel bay for ships, etc. in the future. And no, sod off, we don't need Tech 11. What the hell are you asking such a dumbass frickin' question for? Anyway, folks, that's my thoughts and opinions on this week's developer Q&A. Sorry that got a little bit ranty at one point in there. As always, I exist here purely to try and support the game. That means I want to support everyone's playstyle. Not my playstyle, not your playstyle, everyone's playstyle. But things that just damage the game as a whole never are going to be good, and I will never stand and sort of accept that. Oh, it's my playstyle, it's what I want to do in the game. Then screw off and find another game. If your idea of a playstyle is to completely undermine everyone else's, to completely destroy the very foundations of the game that we love and enjoy, then go find another game to wreck. Simple as that. Ultimately, yeah, I want to support every player to do what they want to do in the game, but not if it's going to bring the whole damn game down around us. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Would love to hear what you guys think. Sorry again for the rant. Otherwise, thanks for watching right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.